presented by Prize Picks. $100 match on your first deposit with the promo code LightYears. Welcome to LightYears. I'm very excited. I got a special guest. I got my friend Mooncey, host of Hoop Genius podcast with BJ Armstrong. If you guys haven't checked it out, you should. Perfect morning listen every day. I think they're going daily in the playoffs right now. Mo, how are you doing?
I mean, aside from being very sleep deprived, because I'm based over here in the UK, I'm very well apart from that. But we pushed through. The NBA playoffs have been exciting. So I'm honored to be here. I'm a big fan of the show.
We're recording midday Sunday. Hey, you did get a break with this game being kind of, I feel like this game, right? I mean, I don't know who the gigantic European Cavaliers and Magic fans are, but they did make it convenient for you today.
Well, they had the Cavs come over to Paris to play a game in January.
Oh, that's right.
Against the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
But I think it's more just they're afraid that Kendrick Lamar's going to drop another song whilst the game's going on like he did the other night. So they just wanted to avoid Kendrick. So they got the schedule nice and early today.
Dude, was that not a great game Saturday night? It feels like we're going to talk Warriors, of course, but it does feel like we're in the dawn of a new era, and Anthony Edwards is letting the world know, it's my league now.
Absolutely. And it's, all the old guard are kind of at home, LeBron, Steph, KD.
That's not kind of, they are.
Yeah. I was trying to be nice. But I think the oldest, star player now is Jokic. That's left in the playoffs, and he's 29?
Yep.
So it's all the young guys shining through. And I think it's a fantastic place for the NBA to be in, because everyone's asking who's going to be the face of the league, First of all, I don't think the face of the league thing exists anymore because of social media and how content is consumed nowadays. The face of the league isn't the guy on all the billboards and all the TV adverts, because no one's looking at billboard or looking at TV adverts. Everyone's just scrolling on their phone, and you have this plethora of choice, right? So it's like the same as music. When we say like, who's the face of hip hop? It was like Jay-Z, then it was 50 Cent, then it was like Drake and Kendrick. And ever since then, there's no new face of it, because everything, you just listen to what you want on Spotify or Apple or whatever you get it. And it's the same with NBA content.
It's a good point, because like in the 90s, we were all subject to whatever the one channel that showed games would put. Like you'd see your local team on a local channel, and then nationally at that time, I remember it was just Jordan. Now it's you can get League Pass anywhere on earth. You can find every game. So some people might be Anthony Edwards people, other people might think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the best young guard. He's playing tomorrow. Could be huge Luka fan, whatever it may be, that sort of thing. I do want to ask you this before we talk about it a little bit. Do you actually think it's done for the old guard? Because it's hard not to notice all the star players who are left are in their 20s now. It's kind of like whether they're young like Anthony Edwards or they're like Jokic, who's firmly in his prime. But I don't think it's over for those old guys. I just think they're gonna, it's starting to get to that point. And if Steph wants to make another run, he's gonna need some young talent to help him. If LeBron wants to make another run, it's getting more to that phase for them.
Right. So we'll talk about Steph a lot, I'm sure, in this episode. But if you look at, if we're talking about the old guard as LeBron and KD, right? Sure. They are architects of their own demise. KD wanted to be in Phoenix. He wanted to play with Devin Booker. And I'm pretty sure when they traded for Bradley Beal, he gave them the go-ahead, because every front office asked their star player when they're about to make a big trade, right? So that's his team. You have to live with it. That's a very poorly constructed roster. LeBron wanted AD. They went and got AD. He wanted Russell Westbrook. They went and got Russell Westbrook. Then it didn't work out. He wanted to get rid of Russell Westbrook. And so they traded him, and their team fell apart as well. So it's not over for these guys. It's just over where they are. Now, if they can get to teams, or if their front offices can build competent, functioning rosters around them that maximize their skill set, and also, I think with the age that they are, gives them the ability to not be relied upon for carrying so much of the load, then I have no doubt that if they were in a situation like that, they can make a good run next year or wherever it might be. However, a lot of these guys at this stage of their career, the teams around them are just built very poorly. And it's interesting because you mentioned Steph, right? I think Steph, being an old guy now, in quotation marks, he doesn't play like an old guy, though, because he's constantly moving. He's in insane levels of shape. He doesn't miss too many games. And he may well be positioned he's certainly positioned better than Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns moving forward. The Lakers, not too sure if LeBron's what he's gonna do with that. But out of those three, I like Steph's chances the most. But this is a new era, and as BJ always says on our show, he says youth will be served.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that's an interesting way to put it because all three teams are subpar right now. The Lakers probably have the best roster of the bunch, but they lost in the first round to Denver. Maybe if they got a more advantageous matchup, they get to the second round and lose or something like that. Of those three teams, the Warriors probably have the best trade chips to move forward. They do have some young players. They don't have their 2024 pick unless they randomly get a top 4 protected. But they own all their future picks. They're not like Phoenix, who's traded all away. They do have the ability to reshape this around Steph and maybe Draymond and Klay in a way that maybe Phoenix is stuck. Like, I just don't know what moves Phoenix has at this stage, unless they want to get rid of Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, and then that's a completely different story. When you look at the Warriors roster, take this year's disappointment aside. They won 46 games. Most years that get you the playoffs. This did not. Disgusting play-in loss. And the West's not getting easier. It's not.
No.
So where
Houston, Memphis, San Antonio, there's a lot of teams coming up.
Yeah, and then Denver's not going anywhere. None of their guys are particularly old. Minnesota's certainly not going anywhere. OKC is probably not going anywhere. Dallas shouldn't be going anywhere. Those four teams, I'd be surprised if they were not playoff teams next year and 50 plus game winners next year. So what do you think of where the Warriors are at?
Well, the Warriors are in a really tough position because I feel like that 2022 championship kind of disrupted everything a little bit in a way that I don't think many people outside of the Warriors organization, if you go back to the start of that season, expected the Warriors to win a championship that year, right? Everyone's kind of thinking
the Warriors didn't think they would. Bob Myers said it. We didn't know we had a title team.
I don't listen to what Bob Myers says. Respectfully, I don't put too much stock into what that man says. But they won, right? They won. Sure. There were some injuries out west. The Celtics, obviously a very young team in the finals, and credit to the Warriors for winning that championship. But along with that championship comes expectations that you should still be able to compete. Whereas when you look at NBA history, teams go in cycles. It's very difficult for a team to maintain excellence and competing for championships. When you think about when the Warriors started this in 2015, and now this has been like 10 years. And I feel like Warrior fans have got so used to success that now you're not in the upper echelon of the conference. You're not competing for championships. It kind of feels like the world is falling down. But I feel like when you look at this roster on paper, they kind of finished the season. Like if you take Steph Curry, if you cover up Steph Curry's name on the roster sheet and look at all the other guys on the team, they kind of finished the season where you would expect them to finish the season as a play-in team. And credit Sacramento for playing a fantastic game in the play-in to eliminate them. With the Warriors, it always goes back to the two timeline conundrum that they had and what they were trying to push. And I've spoken to numerous people around the league, and they've all said that they understand why they did it because you can't sacrifice your future. But going all in with this Steph Curry group after 2022, when your young player stock is at an all-time high because they've just won a championship, that's when I would have made the moves to kind of retool that roster around Steph Curry and realize that Klay Thompson may not be the same player that he was before, and Steph Curry may need some more help in other ways. And I don't think as much as these guys are talented, and Kuminga and Moody and Jordan Poole at the time, I don't think that they're going to develop fast enough to continue to compete year on year. It's key guys that you lost, like the Otto Porter Juniors of the world, that were really helping, and Bielitsa and all of this, like they were really key pieces in that championship team. And when those guys didn't return, you could see that the young guys hadn't stepped up to where you maybe would have expected them to or liked them to. And I think that 2022 championship is like, you got that one, but I think that's been a roadblock now in moving forwards.
Yeah, I mean, that's a conundrum right now. And Kuminga, he kind of all roads lead back to him. You either believe he is going to be that guy who can be, I don't want to say a second star, but be a breakthrough star that kind of changes the trajectory in what are Steph's under contract 2 more years. Steve Kerr just signed an extension. So through 2026, you have that group. Obviously, Draymond's here too. He's either going to be that guy or he represents your best trade chip to make a move for that guy. So where are you with Kuminga? Because I'd love to get people's outside opinions. Like in Warrior world, it's divisive. Some people love him. Some people are not sold. Everyone's a little too close to it because you watch every game. I love to kind of bring someone in from the outside. You're watching all 30 teams. Like where's your head at with him?
I think when you talk about Kuminga being a second star on a championship team, I can't currently see that. I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Kuminga, and I believe in his ability and his potential. He's an insane athlete, and I believe that he can develop his game even further compared to where it is now. However, the Warriors' style of play and system of play is so unique. Not many other teams play like how the Warriors do. And so the question is, at what point does that system change? Because for Kuminga to be the star of this team, you know, you're a team that runs a lot of split cuts and stuff, for example. That's not really Kuminga's bag. You know, if you put Kuminga on like the Indiana Pacers, you'd be like, oh my God, this guy's getting up 20 points a game just on fast break points alone because they're just playing with electric pace going up and down the court. But playing on the Warriors is so unique, and he's not like a guy that's going to benefit greatly off sitting in the corner while Steph draws the attention and he's going to catch and shoot.
Yeah, they tried that. It didn't work.
Yeah. So like, I like what he can do. I don't see him becoming a second star, and I'd love for him to prove me wrong. But it's kind of like, can he be a really good piece, a complementary piece for the next 2 years for this team? Because what you don't want to do is trade away your guys, all your young guys. You don't win a championship in the next 2 years. Steph decides to retire. Draymond's done. Klay's done. Steve Kerr walks away. And you've traded away your young pieces. And now you might not have won a championship. And that might not be because your team wasn't good enough. It's because there's so much other talent in the league right now. Sure. Because no matter what moves the Warriors make now, you can look at the potential moves they can make. And it's like, is this going to get them past the Nuggets? Is this going to get them past the Timberwolves? If they match up with this team, are they still going to be able to guard player X, right? So it's a big risk. And out of the executives around the league I've spoken to, they would not be big on trading away the young players that you currently have, because it's a feel-good thing now. You guys have won your championships. You had a good run. But if you trade all these guys away in terms of an organization, you're going to be left with nothing at the end of 2026.
One could argue, though, like the young players you have, what is their true upside? And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I mean that, is there an actual building block among Kuminga, Moody, Podziemski, Trace Jackson Davis? Those are the 4 young players they have right now. Or are you just going to be back in the lottery anyway? You know, are you just like, that's why everything comes back to Kuminga. If you think he can be the next Jaylen Brown, do you think he can be the next, I'm trying to think of all-star caliber, not like the Kawhi, Kevin Durant tier, but like that next tier.
Like a B-tier star player, right?
Yeah, maybe a Siakam, a player of that caliber.
Like a Siakam is a player I look at with Kuminga and see if he can develop into that archetype of player. But the thing is, right, in the NBA now, I want to say this respectfully, a lot of teams, when it comes to the draft, don't know what they're doing. So it's not imperative anymore to get a super high pick and be in the lottery, because you can find elite talent elsewhere. Like, look at Jokic, was a second round pick. Look at Giannis. He almost slid in, like, he wasn't a top 10 pick. So you look at the NBA now and it's like, okay, cool. I'd rather have those guys, even if none of them pan out to be stars. But if in 26, 27, I've got a mid first round pick every year and I can find a gem in a draft, or even one of my second round picks develops and becomes that star, I've got better complementary pieces around them. And those players, because I drafted them, the contracts, I can extend them in a better way that I can sign free agents or trade for other players. Because if you look at the teams now that are set up the best for the future, for example, the OKC Thunder, or we just saw the Orlando Magic get eliminated, but they're in a great position moving forwards.
Sure.
They're all guys that have been drafted. The majority of the guys on their roster, they've been drafted by those teams. And so unless you want to be a team like the Lakers, who have got just, random free agents and guys they've traded for and free agent signings, then I'd rather have the guys I've drafted. But even if you look at Minnesota, they drafted Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. They traded for Gobert, Yep.
So I do agree with you. If all you're doing is trading for guys, you essentially just you run out of stuff to trade. really
Mhm.
fast. And then you're like the Lakers, where you're like, okay, we got 2 superstars. Most teams would kill for this, but we have no ability to put a complete roster around them. Because
Yeah.
free agency, particularly if you're looking at like the mid-level and lower guys, like there's not a lot of great options there. It's very hard to find like
Even
a
this summer,
30.
like the top end, there's not a lot of great options.
Yeah, like most teams just continually extend good players, so they never get to free agency. So I don't want to say it's like dumpster diving, but it's like, okay, who is feasibly out there who can complement your roster? You're probably not going to find a KCP. You're not going to find, although he is a free agent this year. Like it's hard to find those type of pieces. I want to ask you one more thing on the Kuminga thing, but first, I want to tell everyone about our friends at Prize Picks. All right. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It is the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while your favorite sports and players play. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100x your cash. Playoff time is your time to join the Prize Picks community of over 5 million members have already downloaded the app. Guys, the thing that sucks about the Clippers losing is I just lost my easiest way to win money because I made so much off Prize Picks just betting the under on James Harden. Elimination game Harden, easy money. I'm not even kidding. I'll show you the receipts. I published them all, guys. So I'm just telling you, now I'm going to have to find a new slant. It's a little tougher. Minnesota and Denver don't precede the easy winnings like James Harden, but keep going with it. Keep going, guys. Now, just to get in on this, remember, download the app today. Use the code LIGHTYEARS for your first deposit match up to $100. That's right. Deposit $100, enter the promo code LIGHTYEARS, and they give you a free $100 back. So, you get to play for free. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Also, guys, whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by the Energy Enhancement System, or the EES system. If you haven't heard of the EES system, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in the Bay Area or the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EES system technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/lightyears to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/lightyears. Okay. And by the way, that is true. I did make some money off James Harden. Shout out Big Jimmy.
I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Yeah. So my thing with the reason why I say I'd keep my guys, right, is now when you pay a high salary bill, the new CBA makes it so much harder for you to bring in those role players. So if you want someone with the mid-level exception, you don't have that available to you anymore. You don't have all of these tools that you would have had in previous generations of the NBA to build out your roster and get key guys that can contribute to winning a championship. And if these guys can develop, like, it also depends on the money that you pay these guys. So if you are looking at this player as in he's going to develop into an elite 3-and-D wing versus he's going to develop into a star, that's going to reflect in the contracts that you hand out and the contract extensions.
Sure.
So it also depends how you manage that.
Yeah, I mean, let's get back to the Kuminga thing. So let me give you my take on the Warriors. I think everything is futile for them until they get another star. Like, Klay is no longer that guy. Injuries, age, caught up to him. He's not a star. It's just kind of Steph and a bunch of role players right now. Steph's still good. I think he had a great season. He did get worn down at the end because I mean, let's face it, they're the only team in the West playoffs who only had one shot creator. Not anyone else on that team who could kind of go get their own shot in any capacity. So until they address that, they're irrelevant. They're going to be in the play-in next year, if that. If they just run this roster back, add a center, add a new 3-and-D wing, it's all roads lead to the same thing, unless you think Jonathan Kuminga can turn into that second star, or you make a trade for a second star, in which case, if you're trading with the Warriors, the assumption has to be Kuminga and picks would be what they'd want.
It would have to be Kuminga and Moody, I think. If I'm another team looking at the Warriors, you got to give me Moody as well. Because I think Moody can be way better than, not be way better, but given a bigger opportunity, I think that's a player you might regret trading in the future.
Potentially. I think he slots in a lot easier as a role player on a team. Like, he can shoot the ball. He's been inconsistent shooting it, which has kept him off the floor, but he profiles a 3-and-D wing. And you can never have too many of those.
Exactly.
As we all know, with playoffs. So I agree with you there. I guess I'm going to list some names for you. You tell me if you would do this if you're the Warriors. Forget whether they would do it. Brandon Ingram has been a hot name. I think at this point, the Pelicans have told everyone they're moving him in a capacity.
I'm not trading Brandon Ingram. No way.
No, not at all.
No chance.
Give me the 2-second reason why.
I don't think he fits in well with what the Warriors do. And off the court as well, I don't know if he will enjoy coming to a team and not being the star player, because I've heard that he's not been very happy in New Orleans since the arrival of one Mr. Zion Williamson, because he wanted it to be his team.
Gotcha. Cool. So what about Lauri Markkanen?
I like that. I like Lauri Markkanen on this team. He gives you shooting. He can create his own shots, and he will be able to adapt to the system that the Warriors play well. I like Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, fits their system, and in his case, young enough that even if Kuminga turns into a good player, it's not like you trade him for a 35-year-old. You trade him for guys 26 years old right now. Makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Let's see. What other names about that? Then there's the perennial old guard players we've heard over the years, that maybe Jimmy Butler, Paul George.
Definitely not.
Kevin Durant.
The Kevin Durant would be an interesting one, because it'd be like the last dance, right? If you get KD, you might want to call Iguodala back out of retirement and just run it back the whole way one more time. No, I don't think, when you say you're looking for another star, I don't think personally, after watching what Paul George did in these playoffs, I don't know how you can watch him and think he's a star, right? Because if you want a guy who's got the opportunity to play as a second star, he had that opportunity and he lost in the first round against Luka Doncic, who's been carrying an injury, and the Dallas Mavericks. With respect to them, the Dallas Mavericks played great, right? But that wasn't a star performance from Paul George by any. I think he had a game with like single-digit scoring, and then he had like 15 points, and it was not a good Paul George series. Jimmy Butler as well, with the money that he'll want and the age that he is, and his ability to actually care about the regular season and to be available when they need him, I don't think that fits either, because you're going to have a team now, and this is the danger of having an older player. The Western Conference, you've probably got 10 teams that are playoff teams. Like, who in the playoffs this year drops out next year? And then the teams that didn't make it, the Houston Rockets are going to be better. Memphis Grizzlies going to have everyone back. So that's 2 more teams added into the mix. And if Sacramento could do something, they get even better. So
Spurs.
Yeah. Wemby's the X factor. He's already got players in the league calling him, wanting to play on the Spurs with him. So that's the next factor for the summer, because they got money to spend, and they got Wembanyama, the guy that everyone wants to be alongside. So if you're not going to get guys in that can play the 82 games, seeding is going to really matter in the NBA. It can't be, we're going to sneak in as the 8th seed and go on a crazy run, because you might just not even sneak in to the 10th seed.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you this other question here. So, like, when you look at the Warriors roster in general, what moves would you make if your perspective is you want to protect the young guys, unless you can get a young star, young being under the age of 30? We'll use like a give or take knockoff. Like, what about a Wiggins? What are we doing with Klay Thompson? Where are you at with the Warriors? Right? Because like all roads lead back to the young guys because they're the most valuable trade-wise. But the reason the Warriors are in this situation more than anything is Andrew Wiggins had the series of his life against the Boston Celtics and then turned back into the Minnesota player for the next 2 years.
Yeah, he's been dealing with some stuff in his personal life, which I don't think anyone knows too much about. So that's clearly had an effect on how he's able to produce. But if you're looking at this roster, you're going to have to package Wiggins with the young players to go and get that superstar. So Wiggins is being moved regardless, and I would probably try and move him and see what I can get for him anyway, because that 2022, like we said, it may have just been an outlier year, because look at the entirety of his career. Who is he when it really boils down to it?
Enigma.
Who is he? And if you think they play against the Celtics again in a 7-game series, is he going to be able to guard Jason Tatum the same way now? I don't see that happening, right? So I'm looking at the roster, and I don't think that you've got a lot of moves that you can make, because you've got Steph Curry on the contract. Chris Paul, he's got, how much is guaranteed of Chris Paul's contract this year?
It's 0 guaranteed, but it can be. It's basically a very fancy trade chip that we're going to do future episodes when we get closer to the draft, guys. But we talk about it. It just doesn't feel incredibly important to do at the beginning of May. But Chris Paul is essentially, they're either going to use him so that they can make an uneven trade where the other side will likely waive him, or they're just going to let him go. But we're going to know that in 2 months anyway.
Yeah, and
he won't be on the roster next May.
I should preface this by saying to your audience, because they don't know me, I cover every team in the league, right? So usually after this finals end, then I'll sit down and look at all the books and everything. So this is just me going off the fly here. I'm not really prepared. But when it comes to Klay Thompson, I would have a hard, what's the word? I would draw a line, which I say I'm not going to exceed in terms of bringing him back. And that line has to reflect the value he brings to the current team. And I get it. You guys have won championships together. You've been here your whole career. It's all nice. It's a feel-good story. However, at this stage of your career, are you outproducing a mid-level player? Is your body going to hold up? Are you going to be able to be contributing defensively? Obviously not to the level that you were before, but are you going to be able to hold your own on defense? Or are we better off going and asking Buddy Hield if he wants to come here? Because overpaying for Klay Thompson would be the biggest mistake you can make right now.
And that's a tough one. Like, let's talk Klay a little bit before we get out of here. The Orlando Magic lost today. The easiest thing to notice while the game slipped away, they have no one who can hit a three-pointer. Mm-hmm. They've also been mentioned as a team who really likes Klay. It's been said all year, and it's hard to see how much of that is obvious leverage, like his agent being like, here's a team who clearly needs Klay's services, and how much of that's real. I keep coming to this point. I have a very hard time imagining there's going to be a team who wants to give Klay a huge contract. Not after his last 2 elimination games, not after obvious age and decline. He'll be 35 in the middle of next year. He's a mid-level player at this stage. He can help a team on a mid-level, but we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he has that market out there for him for more than that? Like,
absolutely not. Like, you're looking at the realities of what Klay Thompson is now, right? Unless you're going to go to, let's say the Suns had cap space and Matt Ishbia decides that he really wants Klay Thompson, then he might get the overpay, right? Because he's a new owner. He wants to make splash and he thinks he knows everything about basketball and this is the move. But if you're not going to find that situation, if there's a competent front office out there, and I say this with great respect to Klay Thompson, one of the best players I've seen shoot the basketball, there isn't a team that's going to do that. If you look at Orlando, for example, the team that everyone always talks about with Klay, they've got to give Franz Wagner an extension. They've got to give Suggs an extension. They've got to give Paolo Banchero an extension in 2 years. So you're not going to commit this money to Klay Thompson, because the reality is, to find a spot-up shooter, it's not that difficult in today's NBA, because Miami seem to find about 5 of them every single year. If you can find these guys that are going to spot up and shoot the basketball, with great respect to Klay Thompson, I say this because I know all your fans are Warrior fans. I'm not trying to discredit him in any way, but he's an aging player and he's played basketball in a system that's ideal for his skill set. When you go to another team and you've played your whole career playing one style of basketball at the age that he is, are you going to adapt to that style? How many, like if he goes to the Magic, right? How many plays per game are they going to draw up for Klay Thompson to get an open look? Or are you going to be just sat there relying on Paolo drawing a defense and just finding a way to kick it out to you? Are you going to be happy with that if you're Klay Thompson? And I just think the only way that he actually walks to another team is if he feels disrespected and insulted by the Warriors not wanting to pay him what he wants, and he does it as kind of an FU move, you know, like, oh, you guys don't want to pay me, fine, I'm going anyway, even if it's not the same amount of money, and that would just be petty. I don't think he does that.
I also kind of feel like, and I keep thinking about this, but they do have to draw a line in the sand, because if they end up running it back, are they going to be better than they were last year?
No,
probably not,
because they're older. Unless one of these guys, unless like Pajemski makes a leap into being,
or Kuminga, and it probably ends up a wash between whatever natural decline you see from the older players. So they're still kind of a 44-win team at best.
Yeah, but also I don't see watching the Warriors now. Obviously, I'm not in San Francisco. I don't know this myself, right? But when I look at teams and the concept of building a team and a unit, and you're going to have to defy the odds here next year and make a run. Steph, Dre, and Klay, they're themselves, and they've been together all these years. And from watching from the outside, I don't get the feeling that it's like they kind of do their own thing. You know, they're older, they got their families to look after, whatnot. Whereas these younger guys, they're just figuring it out for themselves. And I'm not talking about on the court. I'm talking about the human element of basketball.
True.
I'm talking about off the court, right? Are they together as a unit? And I'm not saying they got to hang out every day and whatever, but for the development of players, it's like, how much have you guys taken these young kids under your wing and said, all right, cool, I'm going to teach you this, this, and this. This is how you need to be moving. This is what you need to be doing. When you see this on the court, this is what you need to do. And I'm not saying they don't do that, because I don't know. But watching the development, it doesn't feel to me like too much of that has happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm looking at them from the standpoint of I still think Steph's playing at an elite level.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to figure out a way to put a roster around him for the next couple of years that has a shot. That's my end game here. Give him something he can work with that has a shot at making some noise. Doesn't mean you will. Doesn't mean go all the way, but.
Well, if you're going to pay him $55 million and $59 million, you may as well have a run at it. Unless you're just paying him to do a retirement tour and sell out the jerseys and sell out the arena.
I don't need a 3-year retirement tour. He can get a 1-year retirement tour just like everyone else.
Exactly, right? So you're paying him all this money, and you're paying Draymond Green until 2027, if I'm not mistaken. So you're paying these guys a combined like 70, 80 million for 2 of your players. You better go all in, because otherwise that's like half the salary cap already gone on 2 guys. Yeah. So also, if you're not competing, and it's like, what does that say about the philosophy of your franchise as well? Because really, you built up this dynasty, and if you're really going to be a dynasty, you want to be able to continue. I'm not saying you have to be winning every year, but if you look at the turnarounds in rebuilds, for example, like you have to be able to turn it around pretty quickly. Because if you lose Steph and Draymond and Steve Kerr, and then you just disappear in terms of relevancy, and you're left with, all right, you've traded for someone now, but when Steph and those guys leave, they're not really interested in staying anymore, then you're also going to be in a conundrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're in a real tough position here. I think
they are in a tough spot.
But what I will say is, unlike the Suns and unlike the Lakers, the Warriors have had an unprecedented amount of success. So it's natural, and this is the beauty of the NBA. It's highs and lows, and every great team will one day return to the bottom, and then they can rise up again to the top, and it goes in cycles. And I think you guys over there in San Francisco have been kind of spoiled over the last 10 years with just how good your team has been. And most teams in the league, like, I talk to a lot of people, they're like, why are the Warriors fans so mad? Like, you guys just destroyed everyone for like a 10-year stretch, and now you're mad because you're not winning again. So, I mean, just enjoy it, really. Like, I really enjoy watching Steph Curry play basketball. Whether they win or lose, I still enjoy the art form of watching him play. And they're in a tough spot. Am I expecting a leap over the summertime from Moody or Kuminga or Pajemski? I don't think so. I think they found something with Trace Jackson Davis playing at the 5. I think they found something that can work there. But no, the West is just too good. The West is just too. Now, in the Eastern Conference, that's a different story. If the Warriors played in the East, all you got to do is make it in playoffs, and then you could make a run. You know, you could face a Milwaukee team with no Giannis and Dame, and you can. But the West is just too good to even think that we could sneak our way through because there's too many good teams.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. We're still too early in the offseason to see where they really land. Like any sort of, I see fake trade proposals or, they're interested in this. None of it really means anything for
I know we've spoken about
6 weeks, so. Yeah.
I know we've spoken about this off air, but LeBron James in a Warriors jersey.
I mean, I've said this before. I was anti the idea, just too weird. And now I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Where we're like, look, he has 2 years left, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm also not saying it's not going to happen. You know,
I'm just and you know what? I'm here. If that's the end game, him and Steph playing their last couple of years together, seeing if they can get one over on the young guys.
I think that's a great storyline. That's a great storyline. You get all the old guys together, you assemble them. They'll probably end up keeping Chris Paul for like a minimum guarantee then, if they can finally get the Banana Boat team. And Melo will probably be on his podcast trying to get a spot on that roster as well. But I like that idea for, just seeing how like an all-star team of the old guys going up. Yeah, there we go. Expendables. Just an all-star team of the old guys trying to take down, if in a couple of years Wemby is just completely dominating the NBA, or Ant-Man and the Timberwolves on a run, or the Nuggets are still there. I would love to see that. I think it would be fantastic.
I think so too. I think we'll find. We got to wait this out. Like, hey, the way I have a very hard time imagining the Warriors are going to run it back next year. Like, we spent a long time talking about, like, you got to protect the young guys, and they're not going to bring back all the young guys, Klay, and like,
the uncomfortable truth is
switch Dario Saric for a different veteran.
The uncomfortable truth of this whole thing is, really and truly, you should. I'm not saying they should, but the theory of it is, your most valuable trade chip is not Kuminga, it's Stephen Curry.
Yeah, we're not.
But like, you're never going to do that. Like, no Warriors fan is ever going to be like, yeah, let's trade Steph. The Warriors organization is never going to be like, let's trade Steph. Steph's never going to. I don't think Steph's ever going to ask for a trade. But that is the most valuable trade chip. And if you want to plan the next 10, 15 years, that's the move you make to get the most in return. But I just don't see it happening ever because I'd
rather watch them suck and see him retire, be the one jersey player. I mean, he's the only one jersey player left of his era. Who knows? Maybe the next, maybe Jokic will be one of those guys. Maybe Giannis will be one of those guys. You never really know. So yeah, obviously younger down, Tatum, maybe Ant, who knows? Like all things, it's too early to tell for a lot of those guys. But in Steph's case, 15 years, he's 36 years old. It would be such a shame to watch him do his last 2 years on a different team if he could avoid it. So
it would be weird. Like when Tony Parker went to Charlotte, it was just like, I've blocked that out from my memory. That never happened in my world. No, Tony Parker didn't play for the Charlottes. But like the thing is, and just real quick before we wrap up, the LeBron thing, he doesn't care. He left Cleveland. He went to then he had everything in Miami, right? You've got Eric Spoelstra, coach, you've got Pat Riley. He left Miami. He doesn't care what people say about him, right? You have to respect it. So
he's already pulled the Band-Aid. He's like, nothing you're saying in 2024 is more vicious than what I heard in 2010.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And now I'm going to go on my podcast with JJ Redick and not care even more.
New Lakers. So Lakers head coach. Right?
yeah, we'll see. That would be interesting. Like I say, this summer at the Olympics, Steph Curry, it's time to recruit. Get LeBron on board. Next year, when KD's contract runs out in Phoenix, get him to do a last dance with the Warriors because he's another player who, I don't know if the OKC fans show him love. I think personally he's going to try to go back to OKC before he retires. But I would love to see the old Avengers get together for one last dance.
Let's do it. Mo, I appreciate you. Tell everyone where they can Tell everyone where they can find Hoop Genius.
You can check out the Hoop Genius podcast with myself and 3-time NBA champion BJ Armstrong every day. It's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts from. We put clips of the show all over social media. You can follow us at Hoop Genius on Instagram, Twitter. TikTok is Hoop Genius Podcast because some child has stolen my username and TikTok need to give it to me. But aside from that, you can find us everywhere. Just search Hoop Genius Podcast. We do a daily podcast breaking down everything that happened the night before in the NBA, previewing tonight's games. We have a weekly guest, or more than weekly now. It's the playoffs. Scott Perry, former executive of the NBA. He's been in front offices for 23 years. So he comes on the show. We have a regular guest, Coach Brendan Sir, who coached the Dream Team. He was the assistant coach on the Dream Team, assistant coach on the Bad Boy Pistons. He stops by as well. And more special guests to come is what I'll leave that with, without giving away too much. So hopefully I'll see you guys over there.